Hey everybody, Alan Cox here. Today I want to talk about something that is probably becoming one of my favorite features in Copilot, and that is Copilot Notebook. I've long been a OneNote user, still use it today. I've used it for years and years and years, got thousands of notes there. Then when Loop came along, and I started to really use a lot of the features in Loop and started to use that a little bit more. And now, a little while back, Microsoft released Copilot Notebook. It does use elements of Loop, and we'll see that, but it also can integrate into those OneNotes and really brings that workspace into your OneNote experience, or the notebook can completely live on its own. But whether you're gathering resources for a project or around a particular client, or just gathering some thoughts for any kind of research that you may be doing, Microsoft Copilot Notebooks is really has a lot of promise, and I really like it. There's a few things I wish they would change, and I'm sure they will over time. But we'll talk about those, and that's going to be our topic today. So let's get to it. All right, so diving right in, we see I'm in the chat experience, Copilot, or 365 chat experience. And right down here is where we can access our notebooks. Now, I have one notebook that I have created, and we'll just call it Mark 8, as if Mark 8 is a client. I've designated that by a client. These could be divided into whatever makes sense for you. They could be clients, they could be projects, they could be just research topics, or they can be contracts, RFPs, any kind of bidding process. And the idea is that you are taking your in this case a client, and you are collecting resources and references that go along with that client, and essentially you're grounding your conversations that you would chat here inside Notebook. You're grounding the responses based on the references around that particular topic. In other words, it's not if I were to ask it something, it's only going to look at what I have asked it to look at as a reference. Now, you can add up to 20 references here. Last I checked, I believe that's still the limit there. And so we'll look at some of that. Now, what I have done here is I've just added 4 documents that are related to this particular client, or again, it could be project or whatever. But I've some sales data, campaign document, a couple different PowerPoint presentations, and then I've added a marketing plan that is not a plan in the sense of planner, but it is a sense. We'll take a look at that, but it's essentially a page that is pretty much based off of Loop, Microsoft Loop, and we'll take a look at that. Now, I can go in and I can add specific instructions, so I can tell Copilot in this particular client file or notebook that anytime I ask it something, I want you to respond with bullet points, specific information type, specific responses, and so I can give it some specific instructions there. Now, if I'm just in notebooks here, I can go in and I can create a new notebook just by creating a new notebook. Pretty simple. Just create a new notebook. I can do that here. I can do that here. Just create a new notebook. And then I can add resources or references to that notebook by either uploading, creating a link. So if you've got a web page or a Loop component or something like that, any link you can add there, or I can go right into OneDrive and add files there. Now, what I've done is I have a folder called, say, Mark 8 Files. I've gone into this folder and I've just added several of these files as my reference point. And so any conversation that I would have related to this particular file or this particular notebook would only return answers from what it found in its references. Okay, so and then of course we can just go in and add references here, just like like we talked about there. So pretty simple there. But I can add a chat. So if I were to say, give me an analysis of our sales data, just some pretty generic question, but the response is going to be grounded in what it sees as a reference point. So it's very much like a Copilot agent, if you want to think of it that way. I'm giving it parameters by which it can respond to what I'm asking. And so here we can see that it did definitely respond in reference to a particular file that I have, and gives me just some information on that. And so I'm in the notebook here. And if I were to go back to notebooks, go back to client, we'll see these chat history is here, and I can go in and I can rename this so that I can maybe I can rename it to something that makes sense to me or is more intuitive. But it keeps that history as part of the bundle, part of that package inside that notebook, which is really, really nice. Now, if I'm in the Copilot chat up here, if I'm just in chat here, and I were to just let's just grab a prompt here about Microsoft 365 new features. We'll just do it this way. We'll just let this go. The point is I want it to log a history of that conversation here. And so we're just getting some responses back. It's just a basic chat just so I can get something into the log here. We'll go ahead and just stop the return there, and I'm going to refresh. Because I just want to show you something that you can do to add additional resources. So you have a conversation outside of your notebook. You can add that conversation to your notebook. Okay, and it's going to ask me what notebook. And so I'm going to ask it, I'm going to say, yes, let's put it in that notebook. So now if I go to that notebook, we'll see that that conversation chat history is now part of this, as part of that notebook. Okay. Now, one of the things that we can do is, in addition to adding files and different types of Excel files and PowerPoints and so forth, we can add pages. And if we add a page, you'll see that it's very much like a loop component, very much loop look and feel, right? And so we can go in and we can add different elements to that loop. It's a page now, which I do like pages when I do conversations. Sometimes I will save them as a page because now you can just send that right into Word. You can share that. You can share that page, and there's a lot you can do. There, I can lock the page. That's all just part of pages. I'm not going to necessarily save that. In fact, I'm going to get rid of this because all I've done is I told you how to build it, but I've created a page here, and it's just a marketing plan. And it's, like I said, it's very much like like you would do in Microsoft Loop, right, with the / commands, right? So I can do a bullet list, for example. Do it this way. Yep. Bullet list. Okay. Or of course we can go in and we can add tasks, right? So if we want to add task lists, Microsoft Planner, so forth. So very much, like I said, it's basically Loop, and so you kind of get the idea there. One other thing that we can do here that I really, really like is the ability to get an audio file from this. And what it does is it doesn't just read everything back to you. It literally takes every file that's in the reference and it creates a summarization audio that it reads back in a very podcast sort of format. And so we'll take a look at that. And I'll click Get Audio Overview. And I'll pause for a second and we'll come right back when that is finished. All right, so that finished. It just took a couple minutes. And so it just creates this audio summary podcast back and forth. And not sure you'll be able to hear this or not. I may have forgotten to include my audio on the recording here. And
thanks for joining this overview.
But what it does is it essentially gives you a summary of the files, not reading it back to you. And by the way, you can do this in OneDrive with Word and PowerPoint, or Word and PDF files today has the capability to do this same thing. Now, you can keep this, and you can now save this out to OneDrive, and it will save it into your recordings folder in OneDrive as an MP3 file. However, when I do this in this case, because Copilot does honor sensitivity and security and governance restrictions within the 365 environment, because this contains sensitive information, it won't actually save the audio file in this case. Normally that would be the case, and you can move that audio file kind of wherever you want. So I just wanted to point that out, that it does not extract or move the sensitive files that have sensitive data to them. So that's one thing of note there. I do wish, and this is the thing I wish that Microsoft would add to this, and I'm sure they will over time at some point, is the ability to share the notebook as it is. I think we can share the audio file as long as there's not some security controls around that. We can share that. We can share the page because it's really essentially kind of like a loop page, but we cannot share this whole notebook right now. There's just no way to do it. I wish there was, because I think that would added a lot of benefit to just be able to package a lot of things together and send it on to a client, for example. Can't do it today, so that is something, I think if that would happen, I think it would check pretty much all of the boxes for me. But it is still a great tool. It's something that I really enjoy getting more familiar with. But I want to show you one final thing, and that is, suppose you're in OneDrive, or rather OneNote, and that is your notebook of choice. You can see here that your Copilot notebooks show up in OneNote. I can jump all over and go into my regular OneNote, just like I did. Of course, I could do Copilot to ask it a bunch of things about my notes in OneNote. But it does integrate my notebooks from Copilot into my OneNote space, which I do really like because of I can create the notes there, but if I'm used to working in OneNote, I can certainly do there. And you can continue to do other things that you would do here by adding references. I don't have to go back into Notebook in Copilot to do all of that. So anyway, that's our look at Copilot notebooks and the integration between OneNote and just how all of that works. And yeah, that's all we have today. And until next time, I appreciate you watching. I hope this has been helpful for you. Thank you.